map and the screen if you're looking for materials. At this time, we're going to turn the meeting over to the Department of Revenue Administration. They have some opening comments that they would like to make.
Hi, thank you. So again, my name's Sam Green, Assistant Director, kind of in charge of the assessing side of municipal and property. James kind of deals with tax rate side, so those are our two sides of the team. We serve, the Department of Revenue has three primary functions on the assessing side. One is to perform the duties related to assessment review, which is really a function of the Assessing Standards Board. We are administratively attached to the Assessing Standards Board, and so we are the boots on the ground. We go out and we review property records, whether they be in the field or we're doing file review, for instance, reviewing current use, exemptions and credits, the ability of a town to pick up, do a good job of picking up properties as of April 1, which is the pickup or the as of assessment date in the state of New Hampshire. So that's one thing we're doing. Adam's going to talk about that towards the end. We also provide education, and we've had Dan and Bob, and I think, yeah, Kim's been, we've had a few people in the room who have attended our classes. We hold mini courses around the state. We're going to be, in the near future, holding a mini course on overview of assessing in Hollis, so not too far away. And we hold these courses on current use and exemptions and credits and timber and gravel and a variety of topics. The other thing is we hold classes on state statutes. So there's a State Statutes 1 class, which is put on by the assessors in the state, the State Statutes 2 class, which we put on. And then for assessors who are trying to keep their designation, they have to meet a certain number of certification requirements in a 5-year period. So we do a 1-day update. So Steve's been there, Rick's been there, June's been there, John's been there. Welcome everybody. And then, so really the third item in the part I'm going to be talking about is revaluations. Basically, make sure that revaluations take place as required by the Constitution and by statute once, at least as often as every 5 years. So a lot of the small towns in the state, you know, reappraisals of property can be an expensive nut. So a lot of small towns are just, you know, every 5 years if they can get away with it. Some of the larger towns that have seen bigger shifts in the tax burden are doing revaluations more often than every 5 years, particularly those on waterfront. So the Molten boroughs, for example, of the world, do revaluations just about every year. And why are they doing that? Well, they're capturing the value of the waterfront. The value of the waterfront's going up like this, whereas the rest of the town's going up at a slower rate, or maybe even going down. So. But it's a requirement at least as often as every 5 years. We rarely is there a time when a town is forced to do something more often than every 5 years, but occasionally that happens when there's been a revaluation that's gone south very quickly, and the model is just not working. And so there's been a handful of times in the last 15 years that I can think of where a town's been required to do a revaluation more often. You folks are on a 5-year, you know, your 2018 was your last one, and the next planned one is 2023. This meeting is a little bit unusual. We usually have a startup meeting when there's revaluation, and that's usually when values are going to be changed in this year, for instance, okay? We are starting this primarily because of everything that went into this particular project, to just really talk about the cyclical inspection work that's going to be going on, and I'm going to be turning it over shortly to the assessors, but to kind of just review the topics of the contract. And I think it would be a good idea on the board's part, and we're going to probably request it, to do a new startup meeting in 2 years, just prior to, you know, basically the year where you're setting values. That's the much more complicated year. You know, that's going to be when they're going to be looking at sales, doing their sales analysis, holding basically going out and doing field reviews, holding informal hearings, and so it's basically, it's going to be the meatiest part of the next 3 years. But over the next 3 years, there's going to be cyclical inspection work, and that's the predominant, those are the predominant questions I have for the assessors, and you may have, you know, for the assessors as to how they're going to conduct business, what's their modus operandi on going out and visiting properties, trying to get interior inspections, is there going to be a callback process, et cetera. So, just so that the public's aware, we have a list of employees. Employees have to be approved by the Department of Revenue. We have, you know, really, the Department of Revenue's got two big areas where we are responsible and give us the ability to kind of control what's happening in the assessing world in the state of New Hampshire. One is to approve all contracts, and two is to approve all, you know, certify all the people that are in the assessing world doing work here in New Hampshire. And so just so you're aware, I think everybody at the table is, we have Rick's assessor level, everybody else is supervisory level. So a supervisor in the state of New Hampshire, you need to be a supervisor to set values. So they're just part of the team. You know, Rick's got the ability to work with the CAMA system. CAMA system is a computer-assisted mass appraisal system. Yours is, I believe, going to be Patriot. And then there's going to be the boots on the ground people. Those will be predominantly measurer and listers and assessor assistants. So what's the total? I think you've got about eight people, Mike?
8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're going to just pretty quickly cover the measuring and listing, which is all that's really going on this year. That's not to say that there's not general assessing work that's going on that the town's personnel is presumably involved with, or a combination of the town's personnel and vision. But I do have, I did want to kind of just start that. That's the letter for assessment review. I kind of wanted to start with where you folks stand statistically. And again, since you're not doing a revaluation this year, it's not like this is going to change dramatically, but just to kind of give you an idea of where the market's been versus 2018, your ratio study, which is how we track, is basically a comparison of assessed value to sales that are going on. So typically, when you've got a ratio of less than 100%, that means the market is outpacing the level of assessments. And we would expect that, right? In Nashua, the market's been, you know, continuing to go up. You know, in Portsmouth, prices are going up at twice the rate. And way out north, maybe it's tricking now. You know, so it's every market is a little bit different, and every market is local. Your any and all, so this is basically all properties combined for this statistic, is so residential, condos, mobile homes, commercial, industrial, is at just a little bit under 89%, which is not too bad given the fact that it's been, you know, a year and a half. We know that the market's been going up. More importantly, and impressively, is that your COD is at 8%. So that means that the dispersion from that is still below 10, which is something we look for. We certainly look for it in the year after the reval. But with the market moving over the course of time, that number tends to go up. And so we've had a few times where that number's gone well up over, you know, 10, even up in the 20 range. And, you know, a couple of years out of a reval, that means that there's some properties that are being over or under assessed 20 points away from each other. I would note, and these are some of these are pretty predictable. We've got manufactured housing without land at 77%. So it's actually the manufactured housing without land, and there's probably not a lot of these said. Well, 31 valid says. So they're essentially being assessed at 77% of their value. So that they've actually outpaced the single family. Now, why is that? Well, the low-end housing, you know, affordable housing now is, you know, apartments and mobile homes. So that's kind of an interesting thing. We've got land, that's about 80%, and then commercial is up in the 101%. So the commercial is essentially hasn't increased in value like residential property in the last year and a half. So just to add a few questions, and then I'm gonna just turn it over to Vision and some of these will be answered probably by Vision as I'm going along. But a couple of things I wanted to just check on. Are you folks, I don't believe it's in your contract, what's happening with utility values? Is that, because utility values are usually, a lot of times they're done by a different assessor or appraiser. Has that been discussed at all?
The Sanssouci firm will be doing the utility values.
Okay. So, and we'd be looking for a contract from him. If he's not doing it on an annual basis, we'd expect to see one for that year, the year of the revaluation.
It is being done on an annual basis
Okay.
by that firm, so
Okay.
I believe you've seen the contract. Contract calls for it to be done in 2023. We're going to have it done in 2022 to match what we're doing with Vision.
Are there any other special use properties that are not being done? I don't believe this is the case, but I'm just asking the questions. So, you don't have like, some amusement park that
No.
you guys, don't want to have anything to do with, are you? So you're doing all other property?
Yes.
So we've talked about, so basically the supervisors in charge of the project are Mike and June, to my knowledge, unless one of you is, unless you guys are pointing at each other. And
Well,
really,
No, just to clarify, so Steve will do a lot of the commercial, and June will do a lot of the residential.
oh, okay, all right,
And then I'll help it out.
okay. So we're gonna call June, or both of you, supervisors in charge.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
And so, and the work, basically the term of the contract is 21, 22. So I may have misspoken if I mentioned 2023, but 2022 is the game plan for values anew. My checklist is very short because a lot of these questions really have to do with 22 and what's happening then. But I wanted to just briefly talk about how we review their work, okay? And I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but they're going to be going out and looking at a third of the properties roughly over the next 3 years. And whether that's been broken out as to what third's going to be, what year, I'm not certain about, maybe they can speak to. But Adam, who's the East District Supervisor, and his staff will be reviewing a certain portion of those properties every year. Our traditional sampling is usually in the neighborhood of 12 properties per year. That may seem like a small number. We can do more properties, but we have manpower. Basically, even in a large town, we tend to do a sampling of a dozen properties per year. So essentially, we're doing what they're doing. We are going out, we're doing postcard mailing beforehand to property owners that were visited, and we go out and basically make sure that their people are walking around the house, their people are qualified to do the work that they're assigned. And so an example of something where they may not be qualified would be if a measure and lister goes out and then is setting a grade, for instance, like the grade of a property. He can comment on a grade, maybe on the property record card, but it's these folks right here that should be grading property as far as the quality of the property, condition of the property, effective year built, and that kind of thing. The boots on the ground, again, they'll be measuring. They'll be making note of it's 1 story, 2 stories, ranch, colonial, sheds, doing all that, the basic description of the property. And for anybody who's not familiar with this, Nashua is probably has got some of the oldest data as far as there being a systematic measuring and listing of all the properties in town. I know that the administration's been doing a lot in prior years, working with flyover data. I'm not saying that there has been no attempt to pick up data, but this is a systematic data collection effort to visit every single property in the community. And I think it's going to really benefit the work product because it's comprehensive and it's going to be all collected during a short period of time. Whereas, picking up, 500 sales last year and 500 sales, 5 years ago, and you have different people in the office, you're going to end up with inconsistent data collection. So again, we're going to go out and look at properties. When we do what we call monitoring, we'll ask June for a list of the properties that were visited in 2020. We'll do a random sample from the entire community, or really not from the entire community, but from the group that they saw this past year. We will then do a random sample, and Adam or somebody will be out collecting that data for ourselves and comparing it, make sure that there's no errors. We have a kind of a standard error sheet, which I don't have a copy with me today, but we have a sheet that would say, for instance, might charge 5 data error points if there's a substantial difference in value. It may only charge 1 point if there's a deck that's 3 feet off. So it's kind of based on the relative importance, but in general, we're looking for good data collection. When we finish our monitoring report, we provide the assessors with a copy for them to review and comment on, in case maybe they didn't get out to they didn't have an interior inspection that we thought they had. And then we'll get a comment back from the assessors, and then we'll report to you folks. I know that there's going to be a data collection manual discussed, so I'm going to skip over that, and maybe we may have some questions for you in a second on that. But one of my questions would be, should we be talking to June if we need property record cards? Or who would be the best point person, as you go through, like when you finish your 2020?
Oh, yeah, me.
Okay. All right. Are you guys doing anything in-house? Like, do you need a secure workspace? And if you do, is there one?
It's been provided already.
What?
It's been provided already.
Okay, all right. And I would imagine you're doing a lot of stuff remotely.
Well, as far as the data collection goes, we're doing it here.
Okay,
so.
good. And who's doing data entry of that data collection?
Vision will be doing it, and we'll be remoting into their system.
Into the Patriot system?
Mhm.
Okay. So you guys are going to be responsible for all your...
Yes.
And I'm going to ask this question, even though it's probably part of your data collection manual. Do you have a systematic way that you report on a visit to the property? So specifically, who was at the property, why they were at the property, and what the result of that visit was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of my big things. So, all right, we covered special use properties and utility properties. So that's really all I have for now. I'm going to turn it over to you folks to talk about your data collection. And then we can put on our other hat, and I'll let Adam talk about assessment review.
All right.
Which won't be, too long a presentation.
All right. I'm just gonna go over to the podium. We have a little PowerPoint, 10 or 15 minutes, I'll just go through the process. Okay, the hardest part is just to make sure I push the button the right way so that we go forward.
Okay, you want
Try the other button. Hey, there you go. I had a 50% chance, and I failed. Okay, my name's Mike Torello. As I said earlier, I'm with Vision Appraisal, and I have been with them since 1987. I know it. And so I actually worked here in the 90s, so we're familiar with the facility here in the city. So I just wanted to go through and talk a little bit about the process that we have today and what we're going to cover for the first year of the revalue. Well, actually, basically the first 2 years. So the measure and list is going to occur in 2020 and 21. It'll take about 2 years, a little bit over 2 years to get it all finalized. So this has been mandated by the state to be done, and it's a 3-year program. So we'll be doing a lot of the collecting in 2020 and 2021, and then we'll be doing most of the analysis in 2022. Again, there's over 28,000 parcels that we'll be dealing with. So what are the benefits of this process? So basically the major benefits, and Sam had talked about it a little bit with the COD. Over the years, properties go up at different variable amounts and percentages. So this will correct any disproportionate taxation that occurs. It'll adjust for values for market shifts, as he had mentioned. We'll capture all the new construction that's going on. And of course, with the computerized, putting all the data in, it gives good access to the information. And then we achieve the 100% or close to 100% assessment ratio that's required. So the data collection is the crucial part of the valuation process because it's the foundation of getting the values accurate because of the data being accurate. So the more the information is picked up correctly, the more accurate it can be in valuing the final assessments. So some of the things that we'll be collecting are interior or bedrooms, bathroom counts, attics and basements, exterior measurements, any outbuildings that occur, land characteristics, topography, access, all those different variables. We have a staff of data collectors at any time. We'll probably start out with 2 or 3. We'll have as many as 4 or 5 here, depending on the time frame. And we'll have Rick will be the crew chief who will manage the team and do the quality control. So again, the key to it is accurate measurements. So that's something that the team will have guidelines on measuring and making sure that everything is picked up correctly. The exterior inspections will make sure the style is appropriate. They'll be noting any quality things that they question, but again, the quality will be determined by our group here at a later date when we go out and review. But we use the data collectors to give us information and notes and information to assist us, especially if they get into the property, so that we know exactly what they know in regards to what is in the interior of the property. We'll be looking at story levels and story heights, roof structure, roof cover, wall construction, making sure that the year built is correct. And then they'll be giving notes again on what they feel the conditions of the properties are, and then picking up any outbuildings, garages, sheds, and so forth. And we feel that the homeowner participation is really one of the more important aspects of it. We consider the homeowners part of the revaluation process during the inspection process and also during the informal hearing process. So the more information that we can gather from them and the more cooperative they are, the better the project will go. And then we'll be looking, as we do get into the properties, again, room counts, bath counts, bedroom counts, wall finish, floor finish, heating systems, the styles and conditions of the bathrooms and the kitchens. Pretty much a thorough look at the whole process to make sure that we've collected all the important variables that go into the valuation process. So once this is all completed and data entered and quality controlled, we'll start the process of doing the analysis. And one of the major things that we do with analysis is analyzing qualified sales. So we will go through and do an in-depth study of the town sales. We'll work with the assessors to qualify the sales to make sure that they're true arm's length transactions. We'll determine land pricing, land values through the sales and what's called sales residuals, which are basically sales that have occurred with the building costs being extracted out of them to give us the value of the land, an indicator of the value of the land. We'll be looking at building costs and depreciation. And through all this analysis, we'll go through the sales and through geographical areas. There are neighborhoods now identified. We'll go through them to see if they need to be changed and adjusted based on the sales data, and we'll delineate those neighborhoods. We'll use this through the computer model, and we'll set up all the developed rates that determine these adjustments that we need. And through this process, basically it's the three approaches to value that we use. The sales approach is very pertinent for single-family properties, 2 families, 3 families, the residential properties, condominiums. Cost approach can be helpful on new construction to determine costs, and if there's new land values, those items will assist us in determining the base costs for the constructions of colonials and capes and so forth. And the income approach is more pertinent to the commercial and industrial properties. This is where we look at an income stream, deduct vacancy and expenses, and capitalize that net income for a value. So this is where we'll get income and expense information, leasing information, capitalization surveys, and so forth to value those properties. So this information basically is stated is the sales that occur. We are going to be looking at sales from 4/1/2021 to 3/31/2022 as our basis for the data for the sales. For the commercials, we may look a little bit further back just to get an idea of some of the trends going on, because commercials, we don't get as many sales. We'll be looking at the income and expense information. We'll be sending that out to the community in early 2022 to gather information from 2021 leases and helping us to determine market rents and rates for the various types of properties, being retail, office, industrial, apartments, and so forth. Once we've gathered all this information and we've set some preliminary rates, we'll go out and review all the properties through drive-by inspections. This is where we'll look for equity and consistency of the quality of construction, condition, the styles being comparable, and look at the data that was collected now more as a valuation process, along with another thorough look at the data to make sure that it's accurate. So we'll have the inspectors go out, we'll have the quality control go, the Department of Revenue will look at the data, and then our analysts and appraisers will again look at the data. And then we'll determine the values, and then, of course, we'll do the informal hearing process where we send the values out, give the ability for the taxpayers to come in and give us more information on the property so that we have another look at it. So it's a very complete and thorough process of determining the data being correct, the values being accurate, and them being equitable. So the informal hearing process, again, that will go out in mid-2022, and then we'll have the hearings in August 2022, and then we'll probably be wrapping up around September of 2022. So pretty much just about a 3-year process. And then your abatement applications would be due the following year by March 1st. All right, and of course, we're using the web for public relations. We have put items already, a description of the process that's going on, and what we're going to be doing is already on the website. We'll be continuously adding to that, having meetings, anything that public relations that the city feels is necessary to keep communication open with the taxpayers. And then we'll be doing status reports and so forth for the city and for the Department of Revenue so that they know where we stand. So we'll have a strong transparency of where we're at. All right. And again, with this, it's a public awareness, public relations, publish values during the hearing process. These are all the things that we can put on the web and assist in the cleanup of things so that we can make sure that everything is out there for the assessors. We'll be taking phone calls from our office and our data bank center So it'll be a lot of information that will be out there to help the process go smoothly. Okay, and that's what we have right now. So I'll sit back down and then I'll answer some questions, so I'm just not behind everyone's back.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Yeah, I just had a couple of follow-up questions for clarity. How many, you had a parcel count, how many of those are vacant land? And I assume you're driving by vacant land to,
Yeah, right, we'll be checking those just to make sure that they're still vacant and what the topography, so forth is. I'd have to look at the count, I'm not sure how many.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head.
yeah, okay. And just to clarify, are you guys doing all the data collection relative to pickups? Or is that being done by the city staff?
We are doing it after April 1st of this year. Yep.
Yeah, we know that new construction and all the other permits.
Okay. And then, I may have strayed for a second and not heard this, but what's your process for, if you get to a property, knock on the door, nobody's at home, is there a automatic second visit or a callback? Or something that gets left for a callback
We're gonna send out letters, so we're gonna do the inspection.
beforehand?
Yeah, we're gonna walk through the whole city and do all the inspections, the ones we get in, the ones we get in. And then what we're gonna do, based on the wards and so forth, as we finish in the area, so we're gonna do it all at once, we're gonna send letters out and then do those appointments and so forth. And while we're doing that, we'll be moving on to the next area and then do that, so that we kind of stay consistent and we're not doing, thousands of letters at the end, because it's such a large city. We're gonna break it up into areas, which is good too, because the team would have just been there, so they can pretty much say 2 or 3 weeks later, the letters go out, and they're starting in the second ward, but then we set up appointments for them, so they're not too far away, they can help do those.
Okay. So I would, from the board, I would just do, from a public relations standpoint and the board's, as much as you guys can get the word out,
Yeah.
that property owners assisting the assessors. I mean, having an assessor come into a property is for accuracy standpoint, is key. Now, you're not going to get into, there's going to be some percentage, not everybody's going to let you into the property, but the more that you guys as a board and you as a city can promote the idea that interior inspections is going to help with accuracy of assessing, the better. And one thing I would also just ask for follow-up, and this is really, I'm going to bring it up 2 years from now, so I'll bring it up now. For a final review, is that going to be done, like your final review, you had quality control and testing, would that all be done with supervisors and, are you going to do a field review? Or will it be a desk review?
Peer review,
Okay.
yeah, with qualified staff. Yeah. And we'll have guidelines for that, and we're gonna get all this to you guys for your input and guidance and so forth, and of course, approval from the board. But everything is standards. We have the data collection standards, we have standards for field review, we have standards for entering in income and expense information, we have standards for setting the rates and so forth, and every step along the way is approved by the board and then also given to you for review. So you can see the steps that we're doing. We're extremely transparent. We've been doing this way too long. And so this is a great team, and we're experienced in doing this in major cities. Like I said, we were here before. And so we're pretty comfortable with the process of doing it, but it's a team effort on all aspects, because we know the process, but no one knows the city better than the assessing staff. So we'll be relying on them a lot for their approval and guidance in setting up these guidelines and making sure they're consistent. And like anything, as we get out there, we're going to modify some of these things and adjust them as we go along. And we'll continue to get that to you guys, and because you've been doing it a long time and have experience on it, and it helps us to have that transparency and communication for a successful job.
That's all I got.
And did you say that Adam wanted to address this? Oh, yeah.
Yep, so Adam's going to talk about the assessment review process, which is,
Yeah, is,
Go ahead.
First thing I want to say is that it's entirely separate. It's kind of just a coincidence that it's happening at the same time. The last time it was done was in 2015, and we do it once every 5 years. It's a process that was created in statute. We get the standards. It's essentially a test that was created by the Assessing Standards Board that we proctor. Much of it is done in the field, some of it is done in the assessing office, and some of it is done in our office. If you don't mind. I've got packets for you guys.
We've got two things. We've got some packets for board members, but then also a handout I can get to everybody, which is kind of a brief synopsis. Sorry about that.
He's my boss, so it's nice to be able to tell him.
Yeah, this is just one. I'm going to give you that.
So on the first page, there is a chart, or if that's what you're getting up to. It has 6 columns. So in statute,
Thank you.
they identified 6 assessment areas. The assessment standards board to create standards to relate to. It's all there, but it's not really in a format that's my favorite. So I prefer to think of it as in the field, in your office, and in our office. In the field, we'll be looking at your pickups. That is properties that had changes where they needed a value change as of April 1. So we'll be taking a sample of properties that Vision visits this coming spring and going out and visiting them in almost the same process as monitoring, but the key is that we're looking to make sure the value is correct as of April 1. So if there was something that was in the process of being constructed, that they had the right percentage of construction on it, or if there was something that was half built on April 1st, that they have that correctly at 50%. We're not going to be able to be there on April 1, and largely neither are they. You can only be in so many places at once. So there's a lot of estimating or using knowledge of what's going on involved. So we might be there a month or 2 after them. We'll obviously take that into consideration when we're taking a look at it, that it could be further along than they possibly saw it. But at the end of the day, I'm likely going to wait until we get the final cards for this year, since you'll be doing it all summer long. And into, once you file the MS1 and the cards are final, then I'll be taking what we looked at and bouncing it against what your final data was for 2020. And we also do data accuracy, which is really just a complete sample of properties in town. We'll take the universal parcel numbers that we get, the equalization upload. We'll just strike out all the vacants and look at improved properties. We'll visit them, we'll try to make interiors when we can, and we'll just do a survey of every single physical data point on that property record card to ensure its accuracy. If there's anything that's incorrect, the standard that the ASB came up with for data accuracy is actually a percentage of value, either on the land or on the improvement or both. If it's either on the land or the improvement, it needs to be greater than 7.5% of that value for it to be considered a material error, or 5.5% of the whole property. And that's a pretty significant error if it gets to 7.5%. So most of the time we don't find a great many of them, but that is our standard for that. So if there's a deck that's off by 3 feet, that you probably won't reach the level of material error. In your office, we'll be looking at credits and exemption files, just to make sure that there's a properly filed PA-29, that it's signed by the applicant, that it's signed by the board. If they're in a trust, that they have a PA-33 on file. And we'll be looking to make sure that they've all been reviewed in the last 5 years. Either requalified, sometimes in the case of elderlies, or veterans, to make sure that they are still living, that they still live in town, and they continue to qualify. Same with blind. I don't know if anyone's ever going to see again, but we want to make sure that they're still living in town, they still qualify. We'll be taking a look at the institutional exemptions, the religious, educational, and charitable exemptions, to make sure that they have a current A9, and in the case of charitables, that they have a current A12. That's that. For current use, we'll be looking to make sure that there is a recorded A10 or the application, that there's a map that outlines non-current use and current use categories where applicable, and then we also make sure that the equalization ratio is being correctly applied and that the land is being rated per CUB 304, which is the Marlowe decision, that it's not all at the same level, which is pretty common for it to be rated. We also want to make sure that if they're in stewardship, if they're managed, I don't know how many you have, but that they have updated stewardship information, or SEU 12 document. We also have a couple of questionnaires. One of them is about access to public records. It generally relates to how much, how ready your information is. If someone came in and asked for a property record card, could they get it? They asked for the most recent use tax manual, could they get it? Things like that. And that's directly related to 91A. We also asked about your inventory program. That is the program you use to identify properties that have had a change, whether it's information that comes from the building department or any other means that you might find that properties had a physical change, lot line adjustment, subdivision, things like that, that you flag those to make sure the assessors can go out and make the needed changes. So we just want to make sure there is a program like that in place. And the final part is done in our office. And the first three parts of that are just statistics, which is what Sam spoke about earlier a little bit. We look at the median ratio to make sure it's between 90 and 110%. We look at the coefficient of dispersion to make sure it's under 20. And we look at the price-related differential to make sure it's between 0.98 and 1.03. As it stands right now, the ratio is outside of that range, which is, in this market, typical if you're not doing assessment review in the same year as your update. That's not necessarily a huge issue, but it is just that it's already outside of the range. Beyond that, we're looking for a use pat manual that's compliant, and your last one from Guarantee is a compliant use pat manual, so that one's already good. And that if you're contracting with any assessment contractor, that we've seen a copy of the contract before they started work, and here we are today. So you're 2 for 3 so far. But over the next probably 8 months, we'll be starting with the field work and moving on to the file work probably in the fall and the winter. And I'm certainly open to, and I'd love to come back in and talk to Louise and Kim more specifically about what we look for, just to make sure you guys have an idea of, when I come in, what I'm looking for in the file. And that's about the size of the assessment.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
I just had one follow-up. I just wanted to kind of point out the fact that between these two processes, between monitoring, we're going to be looking at like a dozen properties for each of the next 3 years, as well as at least a dozen sales in the year of the revaluation. So roughly 48 properties for the monitoring side of things. And then for the assessment review side of things, you're going to be looking at about 35 properties, and again, that's a random sample of the entire city for this year. And then on top of that, probably another 35 plus properties that are building permit property issues. So it's a specific review of property record cards where there's a building permit filed sometime in the past year to make sure that the progress of the work as of April 1 of this year is accurately reflected on the property record card. So there's quite a few properties that we're going to actually be out visiting for a variety of reasons.
And we're going to avoid overlap, so somebody doesn't get 2 of our postcards, or 3 or 4 in a 2-year period. But they will obviously be visited at some point by Vision, and you may well get the same person visited by us. So any notification, we're going to send them out postcards in advance, certainly, but any notification you do that people are going to be out from Vision is going to be great. We could say the state might do that as well, so they're not completely shocked. You probably will get more from us. We're going to double dip a couple. So.
You're all set.
Got it. Sorry.
So, Mr. Bergeron, Mr. Early, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The 12 inspections, you mentioned third, but the inspections that Vision will be doing is basically over 2 years. So is it going to be half and half?
Well, I kind of got the impression, I think that it's very likely that they're going to still be doing some inspections in 2022. And so my understanding was it would be, and it may not be a third, but there will be inspections in 20, 21, and 22. And so in 22, what I would kind of expect probably will be the case will be that Adam and/or one of his people will be out looking at that last group of inspections that were done for a cyclical inspection schedule. And then they'll also be going out and looking at a dozen sale inspections. These are the sales are being used to be the benchmarks for everybody. And so we want to make sure that Vision is doing an accurate job of collecting information on the sales. Really, probably most importantly, because because if you've got to junk in the model, you're going to end up with a lousy analysis.
I was wondering about the first 12, if you waited, say, not a year, but maybe 10 months into it, if you caught something that was being mishandled, say, wouldn't it be better to nip it in the bud if you did it in 6 months or 3 months even, if you were, maybe not do 12, but do a smaller number, just to make sure everything was according to their standards?
Yeah, so there's not a hard and fast rule that we'd be 100% done with the first year's inspection work, so, it might make sense. The only thing I would say is it doesn't make sense to go out, you could go out and look at the work, but really until the MS1's been filed and we know it's actually in a computer system, we don't really know what was collected. So, but that's something we could certainly kind of bring that forward in our schedule of events for this fall.
That's why we do break it up by year, because there's at least an end point there where we can slip in, get a bunch of property record cards, visit them before they're going to go out again.
Okay, thank you.
We'll also give status reports on what we collected and entered into the system, so they'll know what wards and areas that.
Mr. Bergman, any
No
questions?
questions.
Do any staff members at the table or in the audience have any questions? Any of the Alderman Clee?
Thank you. Actually, just a quick question for you, Adam. When you were talking about the exemptions and tax credit, I didn't see solar.
Yeah, so that's definitely included in the exemptions. Any exemption type that the city has adopted, we would take a look at. What we're going to do is we're going to get a random sample.
Right.
We'll get a download of all of the exemptions that are given in town, and we'll take a random sample. You may not get any of a particular type if we don't have that many, but if we do get one, we'll be making sure that it complies with the statute.
Okay, I just hadn't seen it on their list, that's the reason why. The other question that I had, I think it was relative to what was just asked about the 10 months of a visit and so on. If you know who already has been visited, even though you don't have that MS1 and you don't have that card, wouldn't it be beneficial for you to go out and just do the inspection as if you were doing it yourself and then compare your data when the MS1 came in?
Yep.
Keeping it more real time rather than waiting 10 months after you've gotten the cards and then picking them and going
No,
out?
we wouldn't wait 10 months.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that when we're reporting back to them and saying, oh, you missed this deck, that in fact that deck was added, we want to make sure they had using their processes, that they had time to get the deck on the property record card, or in the CAMA system, so just want to make sure it's comparing apples to apples.
Alderwoman Schmidt or Alderwoman Gathright, any questions? No? So we open it up now for public question and comment. If you can state your name and address, please, and use the microphone.
I'm just going to slide over here so I can see, so I'm not just behind everyone. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. Couple things. When will the GIS update be done with the new pictures without the foliage? Because will you use GIS pictures to help confirm what you're looking at for properties?
Is this,
So we will have a flight this coming spring that will replace the pictures that were done that had foliage.
Okay, and will Vision use GIS data? Will you be using that for exterior work, or I'm just curious?
Well, we'll be going right to the properties and taking photos and
Okay.
doing inspections there. But we do use GIS and pictometry and so forth when we do valuation.
Okay. The map you gave us is Ward 1, and I presume you're sort of marching through the city ward by ward to try to get through each one, well, whatever you get done. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you're going to be doing the input as after the annual inventory, after the April 1st date, or you're going to pick it up at that point. Let's say our inventory isn't finished by April 1st, because in a big city, it's very hard to do that. So are you going to be picking up permits and sales data that is in this year, 2020, 2020 that's occurring after April 1st, or are our assessors going to be handling the input to the computer on that data?
As of 4/1 of this year, the assessors will be handling it. We'll be doing it after that.
As of so before, from now to 4/1, the assessors are on. After 4/1, whatever's not picked up, you're on.
Right,
Okay.
after this year has been closed out.
Okay, perfect. Are you going to be resetting? I noticed you mentioned that supervisors are the ones that determine the subjective criteria, the depreciation, the grade, the condition. Are you going to be making determinations on properties on those factors when you're out in the field for each group you look at now to try and address the depreciation issue that we have in the city?
What we're going to do is, we will make determinations on it, but the team that's out there will gather information for us
Yes,
and put notes and comments and so forth, so that, because they're there at the time.
yes,
Statutory, we are required as supervisors to make the decisions and so forth.
Right.
And that is what we're doing based on the information that they collect.
So what I'm wondering is, will property owners, let me backtrack. What I understood is that as you go out and you look at sample properties, or you do Ward 1 and you get into homes and you see there's an extra bathroom or a finished basement, my understanding was that's going to be taxed as you find it. The card will be updated and the property owner will be assessed for those improvements. Will they be assessed for this subjective data as well, or are you going to handle that all at the end?
That'll be handled at the end. So this is just the physical data correction.
You're going to do physical?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because I think it could be a real deterrent if some of that gets set.
Discussed that and talked about it and felt that it'd be better to do it at the end where it'd be more consistent.
Yes, okay, that's great. And will property owners be given letters if their assessments are changing? We have a policy within the district that if it's not more than 20,000, we don't send a letter out, but if it's less than that and it's a change that's being captured by you, will they be notified, or are they going to not be notified?
So it has been our policy, if our assessors are out and they pick up something and it's over $20,000, that we issue a letter. We haven't discussed this part of it, and we may want to handle that differently, but I think that's something that we need to discuss.
Okay, that's
We'll
fine.
note that and look into it.
Okay, that's perfect. And then the data that you're going to be, the changes to property record cards, are you going to be going to the field with a physical property record cards, or do you use a tablet?
We'll have physical property records.
Okay, so those are going to be marked up, and that data will all be returned back to the city?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Great. And my other questions have to do with modeling, but I think that can wait a couple years because that's all going to come down the pike. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the public? State your
Laura
name and address,
Cahoon.
please.
Excuse me?
State your name and address, please.
Laura Cahoon, 30 Greenwood Drive. I just got one answer because you'll be actually taking the property card to the physical address and checking it out. Will you be also looking over the additional depreciation our assessors are giving out, and also the land factors that they're giving out on land?
All of that will be reviewed, yes.
Okay. What about building permits? I'm noticing we still have a lot of building permits being open, and when they close them, like in 2019 for 16 and 17, they're not putting any assessment on the houses. Will you be looking at building permits?
We will be looking at building permits after April 1st of 2020, and then I assume any physical changes will be done in that year. Correct?
And the only other question I have, but I don't know who to address it to, is we have not done a current use audit in Nashua in over 10 years. Is it possible that we can do an audit to make sure that all these properties are being currently, correctly taxed?
Sam?
Well, if the audit, there's not really any such thing as a current use audit. I would say that if you feel like current use needs to be updated, that would probably be the job of your assessing staff or maybe in concert with Vision. We can assist. Certainly, we can come in and do a review of, that's going to be one of the things we're going to be reviewing this year.
Okay, well, I
Anyways.
think it's, if you look in the files, it hasn't been done for 10 years. At that point, the city did do it, but
Yeah.
it's gone astray.
Yeah. No, so I think Adam made the offer that he could come in and talk to the staffers about review. I think that's a good idea anyways, to really point out what, it's one thing to say, well, we're going to review your exemptions and your credits and your current use, but you guys want to know what he's going to be looking for and how we can improve those records. So I think it would be a good idea if that happened, and he can make some suggestions as to how to update those records. The good news is, unlike a lot of towns, the vast majority of towns in the state, you probably don't have a whole lot of current use properties out there.
You'll be very surprised we
Well,
do.
that could be.
I have
So-
one more quick question, if I may.
Yep.
Vision. Hold on, I've got to remember what it is. Oh, single-family homes are so valuable in Nashua, and apparently they're being harder hit than like two-family. Will you be looking at that? Because I'm looking at homes that, two-family homes that have 1,500 more square feet than I do, and they're assessed $40,000 less than my home. So will that be something you can look at?
Certainly. We look at the classes, and we also look at the styles within the classes. So even the single families, it may be that one is more desirable than another, and then we'll compare those to the two families and three families.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Kleiner?
So I just wanted to note, because this was brought up just a little bit ago, because this is a BTLA ordered reassessment, we will be issuing quarterly reports to the BTLA also. So I know that Mike had mentioned his updates, but I just wanted to note that fact as well.
All right, any further comments from the state?
No comment.
Vision? I think you folks are free to go. We just have a few things to finish up as a.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. There are no communications, correct?
No communication.
No staff items.
No staff item.
Any unfinished business?
No unfinished business.
Mike, you want to go downstairs for a few
Is
minutes?
there any comments by the board?
No.
Members?
Nothing.
Is there a need for them?
No need.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned at 5 p.m. Thank you.